I was the hacker who knew too much. He was the monster who burned the world to keep me warm. They told me running to the dragon was suicide, but when I collapsed at his feet, bleeding and terrified, he didn't kill me. He looked at my enemies and roared, "Find who did this. This is the story of how I stole the devil's heart and how he saved my soul." The bullet in my side was a jagged line of fire, but the countdown on my phone was colder than the rain slicking my skin. I had exactly 3 minutes to break into the fortress of a monster, or the only man who could save my brother would be dead. My lungs burned as I turned the corner into the alleyway, my sneakers slipping on the wet asphalt. Every breath tasted like copper and terror. I wasn't running away from the devil. I was running straight toward him. I was running toward Kang Ho-sun, the dragon of the Chijon family, the man the entire city whispered about in fear, and I was the only person in Seoul who knew that in 180 seconds, his car was going to explode. I checked the time again, shielding the cracked screen from the downpour. 9:57 p.m. The Midnight Protocol. That was what the file had been called. I'd found it buried deep in the Yakuza servers I was forced to scrub, a digital death warrant signed by my boss, Cho Do-soon. It wasn't just a hit, it was a coup. Kill the dragon at 10 p.m., and at 10:01 p.m., erase the loose ends. I was a loose end. My brother, Jackson, locked away in a care facility that was nothing more than a prison, was a loose end. I stumbled, my shoulder slamming into the brick wall of a noodle shop. A fresh wave of agony radiated from my ribs, making my vision swim with black spots. I wanted to stop. I wanted to curl up in the shadows and let the darkness take me. But then I thought of Jackson's face, the way he looked at me when he promised he'd be brave. I pushed off the wall, leaving a smear of red on the rough stone. Ahead, the neon sign of the Red Dragon Club burned through the storm like a beacon. It stood apart from the other buildings, a monolith of black granite and reinforced glass. This was Chijon territory, a fortress where the police didn't dare tread. I wasn't an assassin. I wasn't a soldier. I was Zuri Adams, a hacker who had spent the last year living in a basement, turning lines of code into shields for criminals. But tonight, I had to be something else. 2 men stood under the awning of the club's entrance. They didn't look like the chaotic thugs Cho employed. They looked like statues carved from marble and dressed in Italian wool. They watched the street with the quiet, terrifying focus of predators. I stumbled onto the red carpet, water dripping from my hair, blood soaking the waist of my hoodie. I knew what I looked like to them, a junkie, a desperate woman looking for a handout, a nuisance to be removed. "Closed," the guard on the left said. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stepped into my path, a wall of muscle blocking the brass doors. Kang. The name tore out of my throat, ragged and wet. I need Kang Ho-sun. The guard's expression didn't flicker, but his hand moved subtly toward the inside of his jacket. "The boss doesn't see stray cats. Get lost before I throw you into traffic." "You don't understand," I gasped, reaching out to grab his sleeve. My bloody fingers left a smear of crimson on his pristine suit. "The car. You have to tell him." "The car." He looked at the blood on his sleeve with a mixture of disgust and annoyance. He shoved me. It wasn't a hard shove, just a dismissal, but in my state, it was enough. I lost my footing and crashed onto the wet pavement. Pain exploded in my side, white-hot and blinding, stealing the air from my lungs. I rolled over, gasping, rain mixing with the tears on my face. I checked my phone. 9:59 p.m. 60 seconds. "Please," I screamed, forcing myself up onto trembling knees. "He's going to die. The ignition is rigged." The guard frowned. He exchanged a look with his partner. They were hesitating. Good. Hesitation was a vulnerability. Hesitation was a crack in the firewall. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't wait for them to process the threat. I summoned every ounce of strength I had left, the adrenaline from the fear for Jackson overriding the pain in my body. I lunged, not at the guards, but past them. I slipped through the small gap between them like water. "Hey!" A hand grabbed the hood of my sweatshirt. I twisted, slipping out of the garment, leaving it in his grip. I slammed my shoulder into the heavy brass doors. They were unlocked. I crashed into the lobby. The transition was jarring. The noise of the storm vanished instantly, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. The air smelled of expensive leather, aged whiskey, and cedarwood. The lighting was low, amber and gold, reflecting off the polished marble floors like a frozen sunset. In the center of the cavernous lobby, a group of men stood in a circle. They had been talking, but my entrance severed the conversation like a knife blade. 10 pairs of eyes locked onto me. The sound of 10 safety catches clicking off echoed in the silence, but I only saw him. He stood in the center of the formation, the sun around which these lethal planets orbited. He was taller than the others, broad-shouldered but lean, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit him with the precision of armor. His black hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved by a sculptor, with a vendetta against softness. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline, and eyes like obsidian dark, reflective, and utterly void of fear. The tattoo of a dragon's tail curled up the side of his neck, the black ink stark against his pale skin, disappearing beneath the crisp white collar of his shirt. Kang Ho-sun. He didn't raise a gun. He didn't flinch. He just watched me with a terrifying stillness, as if a blood-soaked woman bursting into his sanctuary was a mild curiosity rather than a threat. "Don't shoot," he commanded. His voice was a low rumble, a vibration that I felt in the floorboards beneath my feet. It wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. The guns didn't lower, but no one fired. I took a step forward. My legs were shaking violently. Blood was dripping from my shirt, pooling around my sneakers, staining his white marble floor. "The car," I wheezed, my voice barely a whisper in the massive room. "Don't." "Get in the car." Ho-sun tilted his head slightly. He looked at me with curiosity, like a scientist examining a strange insect that had flown into his lab. "Why?" he asked. One word. Simple. Demanding. "Cho Do-soon," I managed to say, the name tasting like ash. Midnight Protocol. The starter. Pressure plate. 10 p.m. The name of his enemy made the air in the room drop 10 degrees. Ho-sun's eyes narrowed. He looked at his wrist. A platinum watch glinted in the light. 9:59 p.m. He looked toward the glass doors I had just burst through. Outside, his black sedan sat idling under the portico, rain slicking its roof. His lieutenant, a man with a scar through his eyebrow named Kim Gi-hwan, was already holding the door handle, waiting for the boss. "Gi-hwan, back!" Ho-sun's voice cracked like a whip. Gi-hwan didn't ask questions. He threw himself backward, away from the glass, diving onto the wet concrete. Click. I heard it in my head before it happened. The digital relay tripping. Boom. The explosion shook the foundation of the building. The shockwave rattled the reinforced glass of the lobby doors. Outside, the night turned orange. A fireball engulfed the black sedan, twisting metal and shattering windows. The force of it vibrated through the soles of my shoes, up my legs, and into my teeth. If he had walked out that door 10 seconds earlier, he would be nothing but ash and bone. Silence returned to the lobby, ringing in our ears. The fire crackled outside, casting long, dancing shadows across the marble. Ho-sun turned back to me. The curiosity in his eyes was gone. It was replaced by something else, something intense, something hungry. He walked toward me. He didn't hurry. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator who knows the prey has nowhere to go. He stepped into my personal space, ignoring the blood dripping from my clothes, ignoring the smell of the streets on me. He stopped inches away. He was massive up close, radiating heat and power. "Who are you?" he demanded. My vision was tunneling. Gray spots danced at the edges of my sight. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the agony of the bullet wound and the crushing weight of exhaustion. I reached into the pocket of my jeans. My fingers brushed the cold metal of the USB drive, the leverage, the weapon. I pulled it out, my hand shaking uncontrollably. I swayed, the room spinning. "I am Cypher." Ho-sun went still. I saw the shock ripple through his mask of control. A crack in the ice. Cypher. The hacker he had been hunting for a year. The ghost who had blocked his attacks on the Yakuza servers. The genius he had tried to hire, tried to find, tried to destroy. "Cypher," he repeated. The word sounded different in his mouth, reverent, possessive. I pressed the drive into his hand. His skin was hot against my freezing fingers. "Jackson," I murmured, the name of my brother, the last thing anchoring me to consciousness. "Save." Jackson. My legs finally gave out. I slumped forward, expecting to hit the hard stone floor. I expected the darkness to take me. Instead, strong arms caught me. I was lifted effortlessly, pulled against a chest that felt as solid as a stone wall. I smelled sandalwood, gunpowder, and the faint, metallic scent of the rain. "Boss!" A woman's voice rang out, sharp and suspicious. I couldn't see her, but I heard the click of heels. "Miss Choi. She's a Yakuza spy. She's bleeding on the carpet. We should finish her. Look at the blood, Choi." Ho-sun's voice was a low growl, vibrating against my ear where my head rested on his shoulder. "It's not just on the carpet, it's on her flank. She was shot." "A plant," Miss Choi argued coldly. "A Trojan horse." "No," Ho-sun said. His grip on me tightened. One hand was splayed across my back, supporting me. The other held the USB drive like a diamond. She didn't run from them. She fought them. To get here, to save me. I felt his heart beating against my cheek. Slow, steady, powerful. "She is a loose end," Miss Choi insisted. "Silence," Ho-sun roared. The sound was terrifying. It wasn't a shout. It was a command of nature. The room froze. "She is the genius I have been searching for," Ho-sun said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "She saved the king. And now, she belongs to the king." He looked down at me. I forced my eyes open for one last second. His face was close, filling my vision. He wasn't looking at me with disgust. He was looking at me with a dark, terrifying intensity. "Gi-hwan," he barked without looking away from my face. "Get the medical team. Clear the West Wing. She goes to my suite." "Boss, your suite?" Gi-hwan hesitated. "That is highly irregular. Do it." "And what about the Yakuza?" Gi-hwan asked, gesturing to the burning car outside. "Chodu soon tried to kill you tonight." Ho-sun shifted me in his arms, lifting me higher, carrying me toward the elevators like I weighed nothing. He looked at the blood staining his expensive charcoal suit, my blood. His eyes darkened to black pits of rage. "Find who did this," Ho-sun snarled. "Find who touched her. Find who put a bullet in my cipher." He stepped into the elevator, the doors closing on his men, "and bring me their heads." The darkness finally claimed me, but for the first time in 6 months, I wasn't falling into a nightmare. I was falling into the arms of the dragon, and God help me, I felt safe. Welcome back, my rebels and midnight dreamers. Before we find out what happens when you wake up in the dragon's lair, make sure you are subscribed and hit that like button to seal the pact. I love seeing our dark romance family growing across cities and time zones. So tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Every click and every comment helps us keep these dangerous love stories alive. Now, find your quiet place, dim the lights, and let's get back to the story. Waking up felt less like rising from sleep, and more like resurfacing from the bottom of a deep, dark ocean. The first thing I registered was the silence. It wasn't the empty, hollow silence of my basement apartment, nor the terrifying, loaded silence of the Yakuza server room. This was a heavy, expensive silence, the kind of quiet that only money could buy, the sound of the world being forcibly shut out by thick walls and reinforced glass. The second thing I registered was the texture against my skin. Silk, cool, frictionless, and impossibly soft. I moved my hand, my fingers brushing against sheets that felt like woven water. I opened my eyes. The room was vast, bathed in the soft, gray light of early morning filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. The ceiling was high, lost in shadow, and the walls were paneled in dark wood that absorbed the light. It didn't look like a bedroom. It looked like a sanctuary built for a god who hated the sun. Panic spiked in my chest, a sudden, sharp intake of breath that pulled at the wound in my side. The pain was there, but it was distant, muffled by heavy painkillers. "Easy," a voice said. It was a woman's voice, brisk and professional, speaking English with a clipped Korean accent. "You will tear the stitches if you move too fast." I turned my head. A woman in a white coat stood by a sleek medical cart, adjusting a drip line. She was older, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face lined with the kind of exhaustion that comes from seeing too much. Dr. Lee Kyung-suk. I didn't know her name then, but I recognized the type. A shadow doctor, someone who stitched up bullet holes without asking questions or filing police reports. Where? My voice was a wreck, scraping against my throat like sandpaper. "Where am I?" "You are in the dragon's nest," she said simply, checking the monitors that hummed softly beside the bed. "Mr. Kang's private suite. Drink." She held a glass of water with a straw to my lips. I drank greedily, the cool liquid soothing the fire in my throat. As my senses sharpened, the memories came rushing back. The rain, the explosion, the black eyes of Kang Ho-sun, the way he had caught me before I hit the floor. Find who did this. The memory of his roar made a shiver race down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. My clothes, I rasped, realizing I was wearing a black silk shirt that was far too large for me. The sleeves were rolled up, and the top buttons were undone to accommodate the bandages wrapped tightly around my torso. Ruined, Dr. Lee said, setting the glass down. Soaked in blood and rainwater, Mr. Kang provided this. He said it would be less abrasive on your skin. He had given me his shirt. The thought was intimate, terrifyingly domestic. I looked around the room again, searching for a clock, a phone, anything to tell me how much time I had lost. What time is it? I asked, pushing myself up despite the doctor's warning hand. How long have I been out? 12 hours, Dr. Lee said, her hand firm on my shoulder. You lost a significant amount of blood, Miss Adams. The bullet grazed the rib, missing the lung by centimeters. But the exhaustion. Your body simply shut down. 12 hours. The air left my lungs in a rush. Jackson, I have to go, I said, swinging my legs over the edge of the massive bed. The room spun violently. My brother. I have to. You are going nowhere. A new voice cut through the air. It came from the doorway, deep and resonant, vibrating through the floorboards and straight into my bones. Kang Ho-sun stood there. He had changed from the charcoal suit of the night before. He was wearing black trousers and a black dress shirt, the top collar unbuttoned, revealing the base of that dragon tattoo. He leaned against the doorframe with deceptive casualness, his arms crossed over his chest, but his eyes were alert, predatory, fixed on me with an intensity that made the air in the room feel thin. Dr. Lee immediately stepped back, bowing her head slightly. Boss. She is awake, stable, but agitated. I can see that, Ho-sun said. He walked into the room. He didn't stomp. He glided. For a man of his size, he moved with a terrifying silence. He stopped at the foot of the bed, looking down at me. You should be lying down, he said. It wasn't a suggestion. I need to leave, I said, gripping the silk sheets to stop my hands from shaking. I hated how weak I sounded. I hated that I was looking up at him, small and wounded in his bed. My brother, Chodu soon will know I'm gone by now. He'll know the car didn't explode. He'll go after Jackson. He already tried, Ho-sun said calmly. My heart stopped. The world narrowed down to his face, to those obsidian eyes that gave nothing away. What? I whispered. 2 hours ago, Ho-sun said, watching my reaction closely. My scouts reported movement at the care facility where your brother was listed. The Yakuza cleared it out. Your brother is gone. A scream built in my throat, but it never made it out. It died there, choking me. Gone. Jackson was gone. I had failed. I had run to the dragon to save him, and I was too late. But, Ho-sun continued, his voice dropping an octave, Cho hasn't killed him. Not yet. How do you know? I demanded, tears blurring my vision. How can you possibly know that? Because Chodu soon is a businessman, albeit a crude one, Ho-sun said. He walked around the side of the bed, invading my space, forcing Dr. Lee to retreat further into the shadows. He knows you are alive. He knows you are with me. He knows you have the encryption keys. He won't discard his leverage until he gets what he wants. He reached out. I flinched, pulling back, my back hitting the headboard. Ho-sun paused, his hand hovering in the air. He didn't look offended by my fear. He looked thoughtful. I am not going to strike you, Zuri, he said softly. He lowered his hand to the bed, resting it on the mattress near my knee. The heat from his skin radiated through the silk, searing me. You saved my life, he said. Do you think I would let your brother die while you bled on my sheets? You said he was gone, I stammered, confused by the shift in his tone. He was moved, Ho-sun corrected. Cho took him underground. We lost the trail, but we know he is alive, and as long as you are here, as long as you are breathing, Cho will keep him alive to trade for you. Then let me go, I said, the desperation clawing at me. I have to trade myself. It's the only way. Ho-sun laughed. It was a dark, dry sound that lacked any humor. You think Cho will let either of you live once he has you back? Ho-sun shook his head, his eyes hardening. He will kill the boy to punish you. Then he will chain you to a server rack in a basement and make you work until you die. That is his nature. Then what do I do? I cried. I can't just sit here in your fancy penthouse while Jackson is terrified and alone. You fight, Hosun said, but not with your body. Look at you. You can barely sit up. He gestured to Dr. Lee. Leave us. The doctor nodded, gathering her tray. I will be outside if her vitals spike. She glanced at me with something like pity before slipping out the door, closing it with a soft click. We were alone. The silence returned, charged now with a different kind of energy. It was electric, volatile. I was acutely aware of every inch of space between us, of the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders, of the scent of sandalwood and danger that clung to him. Hosun pulled the velvet chair closer to the bed and sat down. He was close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark irises. Tell me about the drive, he said. I blinked. The USB? The one you put in my hand before you passed out, he said. My tech team has been trying to crack it for 10 hours. They tell me it has a biometric lock tied to a heartbeat rhythm. Is that true? I let out a shaky breath. Yes, it's a custom kernel. It needs my pulse pattern to decrypt. If you try to brute force it, the data wipes itself. Hosun stared at me. A slow, appreciative smile spread across his face. It transformed him from a statue into something living, something breathtakingly dangerous. Brilliant, he murmured. Paranoid, but brilliant. I had to be, I said defensively. It was my only insurance. You are Cypher, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Yes, I have been looking for you for a year, Hosun said, leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees. Last winter, someone routed my shipping manifestos to the Busan Port Authority. Cost me $3 million in fines. That was you. I was just following orders, I said, shrinking back slightly. Cho said he'd hurt Jackson if I didn't slow down your shipments. And in the spring, Hosun continued, ignoring my excuse, someone backdoored my casino's surveillance system and looped the footage for 20 minutes so a Yakuza team could steal a shipment of diamonds. That was you. I didn't have a choice, I whispered. I hunted you, Hosun said, his voice low, hypnotic. I hired the best cybersecurity firms in Asia to find the ghost who was picking my pockets. They told me it was impossible. They said Cypher wasn't a person, but a collective, a state-sponsored team. He reached out again. This time, I didn't flinch fast enough. His fingers brushed against my chin, tilting my face toward the light. His skin was rough, calloused the hands of a man who fought his own battles. But it wasn't a team, he said, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. It was just you, a girl in a hoodie, working from a basement to save her brother. My breath hitched. His touch was overwhelming. My mind was screaming, "Run, he's a killer," but my body was traitorous. My pulse hammered against his fingertips, betraying me. I felt a flush of heat rise in my cheeks. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely audible. Are you going to kill me for the money I lost you? Hosun's eyes darkened. He dropped his hand, but he didn't pull away. If I wanted to kill you, Zuri Adams, I would have left you on the pavement outside my club. He stood up, pacing to the window. He looked out at the sprawling city of Seoul, the glass reflecting his imposing silhouette. I respect competence, he said, his back to me. I respect power. And you have a power that rivals my own. You didn't just hack my systems, you owned them. And then, when you found a file that threatened my life, you didn't sell it. You didn't use it to bargain. You ran through gunfire to bring it to me. He turned around. The intensity in his gaze pinned me to the bed. Why? He asked again. You said it was the lesser of two evils. But you could have gone to the police. You could have gone to the media. You came to me. The police are on Cho's payroll, I said bitterly. And the media? They'd just make me a headline before I ended up dead in a ditch. I told you, I needed a surgeon. I needed someone who could cut the cancer out without killing the patient. And I am the surgeon? You have a code, I said. The Chijon family. You don't traffic women. You don't sell to kids. You're criminals. But you have rules. Cho has none. Hosun watched me for a long moment. Then he nodded, as if I had passed a test I didn't know I was taking. You are right, he said. I have rules. And the most important rule is this. I protect what is mine. He walked back to the bed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the USB drive. He held it up. This drive contains the proof of Cho's operations. Yes, I said. His ledgers, his safe house locations, his bribery lists, and the assassination order for you. Unlock it, he commanded, holding it out to me. I looked at the drive, then at him. If I unlock it, I lose my leverage. You'll have everything you need. You won't need me anymore. Ho-sun's expression shifted. He looked almost insulted. Is that what you think? He asked quietly. You think I kept you alive just for the data? I don't know you, I said, my voice shaking. I know your reputation. The dragon eats everything in his path. I do, he agreed. But I don't eat my own. He placed the drive on the bedside table. Keep it locked, he said. Keep your leverage if it makes you feel safe. I don't need the file to destroy Cho soon. I have an army. I have money. I have wrath. He leaned over me, his hands planting on the mattress on either side of my hips, caging me in. The smell of him filled my senses, dark, spicy, masculine. I felt tiny beneath him, fragile as glass. But I need you, he whispered. I need the mind that saw the pattern when no one else did. I need the woman who took a bullet for a stranger. I swallowed hard. I'm not a soldier. No, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips for a fraction of a second, before returning to my eyes. You are a queen on a chessboard full of pawns, and I am done letting you be used by lesser men. The door to the suite opened. Kim Gi-hwan stepped in, looking flustered. He stopped dead when he saw Ho-sun leaning over me, the intimacy of the scene unmistakable. He cleared his throat loudly. Ho-sun didn't flinch. He slowly straightened up, his eyes never leaving mine, before turning to his lieutenant. Report, Ho-sun said, his voice instantly cold and commanding. We have a situation, boss, Gi-hwan said, avoiding looking at me. Miss Choi intercepted a message. Cho Do-soon has sent an ultimatum. Play it, Ho-sun ordered. Gi-hwan pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. The audio was grainy, distorted, but the voice was unmistakable. It was the voice that had haunted my nightmares for a year. Tell the dragon he has something that belongs to me. The girl, Zuri. Send her out the front door within the hour, alone, unarmed. There was a pause in the recording. Then, a sound that tore my heart in two. A muffled, terrified sob. Zuri? Zuri, please. It was Jackson. You have 1 hour, Kang. Cho's voice returned, dripping with malice. Or I start sending the boy back to you in pieces. 1 finger for every minute you are late. The recording ended. The silence in the room was absolute. I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a vice. No, I gasped, scrambling to get out of bed. The pain in my side flared, white hot, but I ignored it. No, no, no. I have to go. I have to go now. I stumbled, my legs weak. I would have fallen if Ho-sun hadn't caught me. He grabbed my arms, holding me upright. Let me go, I screamed, struggling against his grip. He's going to hurt him. You heard him. I have to go. Stop. Ho-sun shook me once, hard enough to rattle my teeth, but not enough to hurt. Look at me. I can't let him die. I was sobbing now, the tears hot and fast. He's just a kid. He has nothing to do with this. Zuri, listen to me. Ho-sun's voice was a roar, drowning out my panic. If you walk out that door, you both die. Cho won't let Jackson go. He will kill you the moment he has you, and then he will kill the boy because he likes the sound of it. I have to try. No. Ho-sun pulled me against his chest, trapping my arms. I fought him, hitting his chest with my fists, but it was like hitting a wall. He wrapped his arms around me, crushing me to him, immobilizing me. You are not going out there. He growled into my hair. You are not surrendering. Why do you care? I screamed into his shirt. Why won't you let me save him? Because you belong to me now. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. I went still. I pulled back, looking up at him. His face was a mask of fury. His jaw clenched so hard a muscle ticked in his cheek. His eyes were blazing. What? I whispered. Your blood is on my floor. Ho-sun said, his voice rough, breathless. You saved my life. By the laws of my family, by the laws of my blood, you are under my protection. If Cho Do-soon wants you, He has to burn this entire city to the ground and sift through the ashes to find you. He released me, but only to cup my face in his hands. His thumbs wiped away the tears on my cheeks. The gesture was shockingly tender, at odds with the violence in his voice. I will get your brother back, Hosun promised. I swear it on my name, but we do it my way. We do it with war, not surrender. We don't know where he is, I said, my voice breaking. You said you lost the trail. I did, Hosun said. He looked at me, a challenge in his eyes. But I am just a thug with a gun. You are Cypher. He stepped back, gesturing to the sleek computer terminal on the desk in the corner of the room. You said you hacked his finances. You said you know his systems. Hosun pointed to the desk. Stop crying. Stop acting like a victim. Go to that computer and find him. I looked at the computer. Then I looked at Hosun. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He was looking at me with expectation. He believed I could do it. The panic in my chest began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. The same focus that had kept me alive in Cho's basement for a year. I wiped my face with the sleeve of Hosun's silk shirt. I took a deep breath, pushing the pain in my side into a small box in the back of my mind. I need access to your network, I said, my voice steadying. I need an unrestricted uplink and a proxy server. Hosun nodded to Gihwan. Give her everything she needs. Boss, Gihwan warned, eyeing me warily. Giving her unrestricted access to our mainframe, she could wipe us out. Hosun looked at me. She could have let me blow up in my car. She didn't. He turned back to me. The computer is yours. I walked to the desk. I sat down. The chair was expensive leather. The keyboard was mechanical, responsive. I cracked my knuckles. I wasn't Zuri Adams, the scared sister, anymore. I was Cypher. And Cho Do-soon had just made the mistake of giving me a target. I began to type. The code flowed across the screen, a waterfall of green and white. I bypassed Cho's basic firewalls in seconds. They were sloppy, arrogant. I dove deeper, hunting for the digital footprint of the team that had taken Jackson. Hosun came to stand behind me. He didn't speak. He just watched. I could feel his presence like a heat source at my back. It was grounding. He's using a jamming signal, I muttered, my fingers flying, trying to mask the location. But the jammer draws power. If I can find the power spike. I pulled up the city's energy grid. I overlaid it with the cellular dead zones. There. A massive power draw in an industrial sector that should have been dormant. Got you, I hissed. I spun the monitor around. Sector 4. The old shipyard. Warehouse 12. That's where the signal is originating. That's where Jackson is. I looked up at Hosun. He was staring at the screen, then at me. The look on his face made my breath catch. It was hunger. It was awe. It was the look of a man who had just discovered that the woman he saved was more dangerous than he was. 5 minutes, Hosun said softly. It took my team a week to find a whisper of his location. You found him in 5 minutes. I told you, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm good at what I do. Hosun leaned down, his hands gripping the arms of my chair, trapping me. He brought his face close to mine. You are not good, he murmured. You are lethal. He straightened up, the moment breaking as he turned to Gihwan. Mobilize the Alpha team. We hit the shipyard in 20 minutes. No mercy. Kill everyone who isn't the boy. Yes, boss. Gihwan ran out of the room, shouting orders into his radio. I stood up. I'm coming with you. Hosun turned back to me. No, you are injured. I know the shipyard's security grid, I argued, stepping toward him. Cho will have it rigged with silent alarms. If you trip them, he might execute Jackson before you even get through the door. You need me to loop the cameras and disable the locks in real time. I can take a tech specialist, Hosun said. Your tech specialists couldn't find him, I snapped. I did. This is my brother. I am not staying here. Hosun stared at me. He looked at the bandage on my side, then at the fire in my eyes. He seemed to be weighing the risk of my injury against the value of my mind. He stepped closer, reaching out to adjust the collar of the silk shirt hanging loosely on my frame. His knuckles grazed my collarbone, sending a jolt of electricity through me. You are stubborn, he said. I'm desperate, I countered. Fine, Hosun said. But you stay in the command vehicle. You do not enter the building, and you stay behind me. If a bullet comes your way, it has to go through me first. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Hosun walked to the wardrobe in the corner of the room. He pulled out a black tactical vest. He turned and tossed it to me. Put this on, he ordered. If you are going to war with the dragon, you need to dress for it. I caught the vest. It was heavy. It felt like armor. I looked at Kang Hosun, the monster who had claimed me, the killer who was going to save my brother. Thank you, I whispered. Hosun paused at the door. He looked back at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. Don't thank me yet, he said. Thank me when your brother is safe. And Zuri? Yes? Once we have him. Once this is over. We are going to have a very long conversation about exactly what you meant when you said you belonged to me. He didn't wait for an answer. He walked out, leaving me standing in the center of his fortress, my heart pounding a rhythm that felt dangerously like hope. I pulled the vest on over the silk shirt. I strapped it tight. Cypher was back online, and the dragon was coming with me. The interior of the armored SUV smelled of leather, gun oil, and the terrifying scent of inevitable violence. We were moving fast, a convoy of 3 black vehicles cutting through the rain-slicked streets of Seoul like a spear tip. I sat in the back of the lead car, my laptop open on my knees, the blue light of the screen reflecting off the window where the city blurred past in streaks of neon and gray. Beside me, Kang Hosun was a statue of focused aggression. He was checking a handgun, a matte black semi-automatic that looked heavy and lethal. His movements were precise, almost ritualistic. Eject the magazine, check the chamber, slide it back, click. Every sound in the confined space felt amplified. My heart was a frantic bird battering against my ribs, confined by the tight straps of the tactical vest he had forced me to wear. Stop shaking, Hosun said. He didn't look up from the weapon. I'm not shaking, I lied. It's the vibration of the car. You are shaking, he corrected, sliding the gun into a holster beneath his jacket. And your heart rate is elevated. I can see the pulse in your neck. I self-consciously pulled the collar of the silk shirt higher. My brother is being held by a psychopath who threatened to cut him into pieces. Forgive me if I'm not calm. Hosun turned his head slowly. In the shadows of the car, his eyes were pools of ink. Fear is useful, he said quietly. Panic is not. Panic makes you miss details. Panic makes you dead. I won't panic, I said, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I'll do my job. Good. He reached down to the floorboard and picked up another object, a smaller gun, a compact pistol that looked like a toy compared to his, but I knew better. He held it out to me, grip first. I stared at it. I don't use guns. I use code. Tonight, you might need both, he said. Take it. I hesitated. My hands were made for typing, for soldering circuit boards, for the delicate work of unwiring a firewall. They weren't made for taking lives. Zuri, his voice dropped, turning into that rough, commanding timbre that made my stomach flip. Take the weapon. I took it. The metal was cold and heavy. It felt wrong in my hand, an alien weight. Do you know how to use it? He asked. Point and click? I offered weakly. Hosun didn't smile. He shifted in his seat, turning his body toward me. The space between us vanished. He reached out, his large hands covering mine, adjusting my grip on the pistol. Not point and click, he murmured. His breath ghosted over my ear, warm and smelling of mint. Stance, grip, breath control. If you fire without bracing, the recoil will break your wrist or send the bullet into the ceiling. He guided my fingers. His touch was firm, authoritative. His thumb pressed against the back of my hand, aligning my wrist. Keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to destroy what is in front of you, he instructed. Safety is here. Flick it down to fire. I nodded, unable to speak. The proximity was overwhelming. I could feel the heat radiating from his chest through his shirt. I could feel the hard muscle of his thigh pressed against mine on the leather seat. It was perverse to feel this kind of attraction while we drove toward a slaughterhouse, but my body didn't care about context. My body only knew that the most dangerous man in the city was teaching me how to survive, and he was doing it with a tenderness that terrified me more than the gun. If anyone comes near the command vehicle, Hosun said, his eyes locking onto mine, you do not hesitate. You do not ask questions. You put 2 rounds in their chest. Do you understand? Yes, I whispered. Good. He released my hands, leaving them cold. Put it in the vest. I slid the gun into the tactical pouch on my chest. It sat there, a heavy promise of violence right over my heart. The radio crackled from the front seat where Kim Gi-hwan was driving. "Boss, we are 2 minutes out. Alpha team is in position at the perimeter. Beta team is securing the rear exit. Any movement?" Ho-sun asked, his focus snapping back to the mission. "Negative. The shipyard looks dark. No guards visible. That means they are inside," I said, looking at my screen. "Or they're waiting in ambush." "Show me," Ho-sun commanded. I tilted the laptop toward him. "I've tapped into the shipyard's logistical cameras. They're old, grainy, but I wrote a script to enhance the thermal imaging." I pointed to a cluster of heat signatures in the center of the largest warehouse. "There," I said. 7 heat signatures standing, 1 seated. The seated one is small. "Jackson," Ho-sun said, the name a growl. "And look at the perimeter." I swiped to a different camera view. "Here, here, and here. Cold spots on the thermal." Ho-sun frowned. "What are cold spots?" "Jamming devices," I explained. "They generate a localized electromagnetic field to block cellular signals. If your men try to use their radios inside that perimeter, they'll just get static. Cho wants to deafen you. Can you disable them? Remotely?" "No. They're analog hardware. But I can loop the signal." I typed furiously. "I can trick their system into thinking the jammers are active while opening a frequency tunnel for your comms. It's like drilling a hole in a wall of noise." "How long?" 30 seconds. Ho-sun watched my fingers fly across the keys. The look on his face was one I was starting to recognize, a mixture of possessive pride and sheer disbelief. "Done," I said, hitting the enter key. "Your radios will work on frequency 144.2. Cho's men won't hear a thing." Ho-sun looked at Gi-hwan. "You heard her. Switch channels." "Yes, boss." The car slowed, turning off the main road onto a gravel track. The headlights cut through the rain, illuminating rusted metal fences and towering cranes that looked like the skeletons of prehistoric beasts. The shipyard was a graveyard of industry, silent and imposing. "Kill the lights," Ho-sun ordered. The world went dark. The car rolled to a stop in the shadow of a stacked shipping container. "We are here," Ho-sun said. He turned to me. "Stay in the car. Lock the doors. Keep the laptop running. You are my eyes, Zuri. Guide us in." "I will," I promised. He reached out, his hand cupping the back of my neck. He pulled me forward, pressing his forehead against mine for a brief, intense second. "If things go wrong," he whispered. "If I do not come back, wipe the drive, burn the car, and run." "You're coming back," I said fiercely. "You have a debt to pay." A corner of his mouth quirked up. Stubborn, he pulled away, opened the door, and stepped out into the rain. I watched him go. He moved differently than the soldiers flanking him. They moved with military precision, checking angles. Ho-sun moved with arrogance. He walked straight toward the dark maw of the warehouse, his coat billowing behind him. A king entering his own court to dispense judgment. I locked the doors. I was alone in the armored silence. "Okay, Cypher," I muttered to myself. "Time to work." I switched views on my screen. I had eyes everywhere. I could see Ho-sun's team stacking up at the side entrance. I could see the Yakuza guards inside, oblivious, smoking cigarettes near a stack of crates. "Boss," I said into the headset I had put on. 3 targets inside the east door, 2 on the catwalk above. "Copy." Ho-sun's voice came through, crystal clear thanks to my frequency tunnel. "Alpha 1, take the catwalk. Alpha 2, breach on my mark." I watched the screen, holding my breath. On the monitor, shadows moved. The Chijon soldiers were ghosts. 2 muffled thwips suppressed gunfire and the men on the catwalk crumpled. "Catwalk clear," a soldier reported. "Breaching," Ho-sun said. The door on the screen flew open. The firefight was instant and brutal. Muzzle flashes lit up the grainy black and white feed like strobe lights. I winced, even though I couldn't hear the shots. I saw bodies fall. "Clear." Ho-sun's voice came back, moving to the inner sanctum. "Wait," I said, my eyes scanning the other feeds. Something was wrong. "Ho-sun, stop." "What is it?" "The heat signatures," I said, zooming in on the central room where Jackson was. "They're moving. They're fading." "Fading?" "They're cooling down," I realized with a jolt of horror. "They aren't people. They're decoys. Heat lamps set up on mannequins." "It's a trap," Ho-sun hissed. "Get out," I screamed. "Get out of there." Suddenly, the screen flickered. The feed from the warehouse distorted, tearing into static. A red error message flashed across my laptop. Signal lost. Connection refused. "Ho-sun?" I shouted. "Ho-sun?" Static. I typed frantically, trying to reroute the connection. Come on, come on. Then, a new voice cut through my headset. Not Ho-sun's, not Giwan's. "You are very clever, Miss Adams." It was a woman's voice. Smooth, cool, Miss Choi. I froze. "Choi? What did you do?" "I merely corrected a security flaw," she purred. "You opened a frequency tunnel. I collapsed it, and I redirected the external feeds to a loop." My blood ran cold. You're jamming us." "I am ensuring the proper outcome," Miss Choi said. "The boss is emotional when it comes to you. He is taking unnecessary risks. He walked into a kill box because he trusted your intel. Intel I allowed you to see. You're working for Cho," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "I work for the stability of the Chijon family," she corrected. "Ho-sun is reckless. He is starting a war for a stray cat. When he dies tonight, the family will need new leadership, stable leadership, and Cho has agreed to a very lucrative truce once the dragon is slain." "You traitorous bitch," I snarled. "He trusts you." "He trusted you," she laughed softly. "And look where it got him. He is currently standing in an empty warehouse that has been rigged with C4 explosive. The detonator is on a timer. 2 minutes, Zuri. Do you think he can run fast enough?" The line clicked dead. I sat there for one paralyzed second. The silence in the car was deafening. Ho-sun was inside. He was walking into a bomb, just like the one that was supposed to kill him in the car, and he couldn't hear me. He couldn't see the trap. I looked at the gun in my vest. I looked at the laptop. I could run. That's what a smart person would do. That's what a victim would do. Wipe the drive, burn the car, disappear. But I wasn't a victim anymore. I was Cypher, and the dragon was mine. I grabbed the laptop. I grabbed the spare comms unit from the console. I unlocked the car door and threw it open. The rain hit me instantly, soaking the silk shirt, plastering my hair to my face. The pain in my side roared, a hot knife twisting in my ribs, but I didn't care. I ran. I ran toward the warehouse, toward the dark, looming metal beast that was about to swallow the man I needed. I reached the side of the building. I could hear muffled shouting inside. They were confused. They didn't know the bomb was there. I needed to get a signal through. I needed to override Miss Choi's jammer, but the jammer was powerful. I had to be close to the source to overpower it. I scanned the exterior. There, a junction box near the main power conduit. If I could jack directly into the hardline, I could bypass the wireless jamming and send a all-call alert to their earpieces through the building's internal PA system. I sprinted to the box. It was locked. I didn't have time to pick it. I pulled the gun from my vest. "Safety off," I muttered, my hands shaking. Grip. Stance. I pressed the muzzle against the lock and pulled the trigger. Bang. The recoil jarred my shoulder, hurting my wound, but the lock shattered. I ripped the door open. I pulled a cable from my laptop bag and jammed it into the diagnostic port. I balanced the laptop on my knees, typing with one hand while holding the gun with the other, watching the darkness behind me. "Override," I hissed. "Come on, override." Access granted. I tapped into the PA system. I maxed the volume. I leaned into the laptop's microphone. "Ho-sun, it's a trap. C4, get out. Now." My voice boomed through the warehouse, amplified to a deafening volume. It echoed off the metal walls, a god voice from the heavens. Inside, I heard the sudden chaos, shouting, running. Then, a timer on my screen caught my eye. The building's power grid was surging. The detonator. "Run!" I screamed into the mic. I scrambled back, away from the wall, diving behind a stack of concrete pipes. The earth heaved. Boom. This explosion was bigger than the car. It was a sun being born inside the warehouse. The metal walls buckled. The roof lifted off like a lid on a boiling pot. Fire and debris erupted outward. The shockwave hit me, throwing me backward into the mud. My laptop skidded away. I curled into a ball, shielding my head as shrapnel rained down around me. Then, silence. Just the hiss of rain on hot metal and the crackle of flames. "Ho-sun," I whimpered, pushing myself up. Mud coated my hands. My ears were ringing. I looked at the burning skeleton of the warehouse. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling toward the fire. Ho-sun. Movement in the smoke. A figure emerged from the curtain of gray ash and orange flame. He was coughing, dragging someone with him. Ho-sun. His suit was shredded. His face was streaked with soot and blood. But he was walking. He was dragging Kim Gi-hwan, who looked unconscious. Behind him, other soldiers stumbled out, battered but alive. I ran to him. I didn't care about dignity. I slammed into him, wrapping my arms around his neck, burying my face in his ruined shirt. "You're alive," I sobbed. "You're alive." Ho-sun stiffened for a second. Then his arms came around me, crushing me against him. He smelled of smoke and blood, but underneath, he was solid and warm. "You came back," he rasped, his voice rough from the smoke. "I told you to stay in the car. You were walking into a bomb," I cried, pulling back to look at his face. "Miss Choi." She jammed the signal. "She's working for Cho." It was a trap. Ho-sun's eyes, which had been soft for a moment, instantly turned into shards of ice. "Choi?" he asked. "Dangerous and low," she told me, I said. "On the comms. She said she wanted stable leadership. She tried to kill you." Ho-sun looked around at his men. They were regrouping, checking weapons. He lowered Gi-hwan to the ground as a medic rushed over. "Where is she?" Ho-sun asked, scanning the perimeter. "She was monitoring the feed remotely," I said. "But she said Cho has Jackson," she said. I swallowed hard. She said this was just the distraction. Distraction for what? Before I could answer, a spotlight blinded us. It came from the crane tower high above the shipyard. A beam of pure white light pinned us against the mud. "Welcome to the party." Cho Do-soon's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. I squinted up against the glare. On the high platform of the crane, a figure stood holding a megaphone, and beside him, dangling from a rope tied to the railing, swaying precariously over the 100-foot drop, was a small, struggling figure, Jackson. "I told you, Dragon," Cho shouted, his laughter manic and tinny over the speakers. "I don't leave loose ends." Ho-sun pushed me behind him instantly. He raised his gun, but the range was too far. "Let him go, Cho," Ho-sun roared. "Come down here and face me." "I think not," Cho yelled down. "I have a better idea. You want the boy? You can catch him." Cho pulled a knife. He held it to the rope holding my brother. "No," I screamed, breaking from Ho-sun's grip. I ran forward into the light. "Take me. Cho, take me. I'm the one you want. I have the codes. I have the money." "I already have the money," Cho laughed. "Miss Choi was very helpful with your passwords while you were playing nursemaid. I emptied the dragon's accounts 5 minutes ago." He sawed at the rope. Jackson screamed, a thin, terrifying sound that tore through me. "Zuri, look at me," Ho-sun said. He was beside me again, grabbing my shoulder. He wasn't looking at the crane. He was looking at the control box at the base of the tower. "Can you override the crane?" he asked. "Can you lower him?" I lost my laptop," I said, panic choking me. "It's in the mud. It might be broken." "Find it," Ho-sun ordered. "Fix it. Hack it. There's no time." "He's cutting the rope." "Buy me time," Ho-sun said. He turned and looked at me with an intensity that burned. "You are the queen, Zuri. Rule the board. I will get the piece." He turned and sprinted toward the base of the crane. He didn't look for cover. He ran straight into the open, drawing fire from Cho's guards positioned on the tower. He was the distraction now. I fell to my knees in the mud, frantically searching for my laptop. I found it half buried. The casing cracked. I flipped it open. The screen flickered, glitched, then blue light. It was alive. "Okay," I breathed, wiping mud from the trackpad. "Okay, Jackson. Hold on," I typed. My fingers slipped on the wet keys. I connected to the shipyard's industrial control network. It was ancient, unguarded. I found the crane controls. Warning, manual override engaged. Cho had locked the controls from the cab. "Damn it," I cursed. I looked up. Ho-sun was climbing the ladder of the crane. Bullets sparked off the metal rungs around him. He fired back, one-handed, climbing with a speed that defied physics. He was a demon ascending from hell. "Zuri!" Jackson screamed as the rope frayed. I looked back at the screen. I couldn't lower the rope, but I could move the arm. If I swung the crane arm fast enough, Centrifugal force would swing Jackson toward the catwalk where Ho-sun was climbing. But if I timed it wrong, I would smash my brother into the steel girders. It was a shot in the dark. A 1 in a million calculation. Panic makes you dead, I whispered Ho-sun's words. I took a breath. I watched Ho-sun reach the platform. He vaulted over the railing, tackling a guard. Cho saw him. Cho turned, slashing at the rope. The rope snapped. Jackson fell. Now! I screamed, hitting the enter key. The crane's massive engine groaned. The arm jerked violently to the left. Jackson didn't fall straight down. The momentum of the swinging arm threw him in a wide arc through the air. He was flying toward the platform. Ho-sun saw him coming. He abandoned the fight. He ignored Cho, who was raising a gun to shoot him in the back. Ho-sun leaped from the railing, diving into the empty air. It was a moment frozen in time. The rain, the light, the falling boy, and the leaping man. Ho-sun caught Jackson in midair. One arm wrapped around my brother's waist. His other hand slammed into the steel lattice of the crane's support structure. He grunted, the impact shuddering through his body. But he held on. They were dangling 50 feet in the air. Cho soon leaned over the railing above them, laughing. He aimed his gun at Ho-sun's clinging hand. Goodbye, dragon. My laptop was useless for this. I grabbed the gun from my vest, the one Ho-sun had given me. Stance, grip, breath. I raised the gun. I was 70 yards away. Impossible shot for a novice. But I wasn't aiming for Cho. I was aiming for the hydraulic hose exposed on the side of the cab, right next to where Cho was standing. I exhaled. I squeezed the trigger. Bang. The bullet sparked against the metal. I missed. Focus. I screamed at myself. I fired again. Bang. A jet of high-pressure hydraulic fluid exploded from the hose. It hit Cho soon in the face with the force of a fire hose. He screamed, blinded, losing his balance. He stumbled back, his gun firing wildly into the air. He slipped on the wet grating. He went over the edge. There was no one to catch him. He fell, a screaming ragdoll, and smashed into the concrete below with a sickening, wet crunch. Silence descended on the shipyard. I got you. Ho-sun's voice echoed down. He was pulling himself up, muscles straining, hauling Jackson onto the safety of the lower maintenance platform. They were safe. I dropped the gun. I dropped the laptop. I sat down in the mud and put my face in my hands, shaking so hard my teeth rattled. A few minutes later, heavy boots approached. I looked up. Ho-sun stood there. He was wet, bloody, covered in grease and soot. He looked like a god of war who had just crawled out of a trench. He was carrying Jackson, who was clinging to him like a koala. Ho-sun set my brother down. Jackson ran to me. Zuri. We collided, a tangle of wet limbs and tears. I checked him all over. Bruises, cuts, but whole. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry. The dragon saved me, Jackson whispered, eyes wide. He flew, Zuri. He actually flew. I looked up at Ho-sun. He was watching us. His expression was exhausted, but his eyes were burning with that same intense fire. He walked over. He knelt in the mud, ruining what was left of his pants. He reached out and touched my face, smearing a streak of soot on my cheek. You came back, he said softly. You told me to run, I said. I don't take orders well. You shot the hydraulics, he said, glancing at the crane. That was calculated risk. I managed a weak smile. Ho-sun didn't smile. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against mine. You are not a hacker, he whispered. You are a Valkyrie. He pulled back, his hand lingering on my neck. Let's go home, he said. We have a traitor to hunt. As we walked back to the surviving cars, Ho-sun carrying Jackson, his hand firmly gripping mine, I realized something. The gilded cage wasn't a cage anymore. It was a castle, and I had just helped the king defend the walls. Miss Choi was out there somewhere. She had the money, she had the betrayal, but we had the dragon, and now the dragon had me. The drive back to the city was silent, but it wasn't the empty silence of fear. It was the heavy, charged silence of survivors. Jackson slept in the back seat, his head pillowed on my lap, his breathing hitching every few minutes in a dream sob that broke my heart. I stroked his hair, watching the city lights flicker past, but my attention was fixed on the man in the front passenger seat. Kang Ho-sun hadn't spoken since we left the shipyard. He sat with his head leaned back against the headrest, eyes closed, his profile illuminated intermittently by passing street lamps. He looked wrecked. The charcoal suit was gone, discarded in the mud. His white shirt was torn at the shoulder, stained with oil and blood that I prayed wasn't his own. But his left hand rested on the center console, fingers curled into a loose fist, and every time the car hit a bump, his hand would shift, brushing against my knee. He didn't pull away, neither did I. We arrived at the penthouse. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was a command center. Soldiers swarmed the lobby, their eyes wide as they saw their boss walk in looking like he had wrestled a hurricane. "Secure the perimeter," Hosun ordered Giwan, his voice rasping but unbroken. "Nobody in or out without a DNA scan. If a bird lands on the balcony, I want to know about it." "Yes, boss. And the boy?" "The boy stays with Zuri," Hosun said. "Put a guard on the guest room door. A reliable one. If he wakes up, I want him fed." He turned to me. The exhaustion in his eyes was profound. Deep shadows bruising the skin beneath his lashes, but the fire was still there. "Go," he said softly. "Get him settled. Then come to my study." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. I took Jackson to the guest room. I tucked him into a bed that cost more than our entire education, watching as he burrowed into the duvet. Safe for the first time in a year, I washed the mud from my face in the ensuite bathroom, staring at my reflection. My eyes looked different. Harder, older. I wasn't the girl who ran from the rain anymore. I was the woman who shot a hydraulic line to drop a murderer. I walked down the hallway to the study. The door was ajar. Hosun was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk. He had a bottle of whiskey open and a first aid kit spread out in front of him. He was trying to wrap a bandage around his forearm, but his movements were stiff, clumsy. "You're doing it wrong," I said, stepping into the room. He looked up. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I am right-handed. The cut is on my right arm. Physics is against me. Let me." I walked around the desk. I took the gauze from his hand. His skin was hot to the touch, radiating a feverish heat that spoke of adrenaline crash. I cleaned the wound, a long, shallow slice from the crane's metal grating. He didn't flinch as the alcohol stung him. He just watched me. "You have good hands," he murmured. "Steady. They have to be," I said, applying the antiseptic. "Coding requires precision. One wrong keystroke, and the system crashes." "You crashed more than a system tonight," he said. "You crashed an empire. Cho is dead. The Yakuza are scattered." "And Miss Choi?" I asked, looking up at him. "She's still out there. She has your money." Hosun's face hardened. The softness vanished, replaced by the granite mask of the dragon. "She has my money," he agreed, "but she made a mistake." "What mistake?" "She thinks I care about the money." He reached out with his uninjured hand, catching my chin, forcing me to hold his gaze. "I built this empire from dirt," he said. "I can build it again. Money is just paper. Loyalty is blood. And she bled me." "She knows your protocols," I said, my mind already racing, shifting into problem-solving mode. "She knows your safe houses. She knows your passwords. She's the one who jammed the signal at the warehouse. She's dangerous." "She is a administrator," Hosun dismissed. "She knows how to organize. She does not know how to hunt. I do." "You're hurt," I pointed out, taping the bandage down. "You can't hunt anyone right now. Then I will use my new weapon." He turned his chair, gesturing to the bank of monitors on the wall behind him. They were dark. "Miss Choi locked us out," he said. "Before she ran, she initiated a scorched earth protocol on the internal servers. I can't access the satellite feeds. I can't access the city grid. I am blind." He looked at me. It was the same look he had given me in the bedroom when he handed me the laptop. A challenge. An invitation. "Can you fix it, Cypher?" I looked at the black screens. It wasn't just a lock. It was a fortress she had built to keep him blind while she escaped. "Move," I said. Hosun stood up, surrendering his chair. I sat down. The leather was warm from his body. I pulled the keyboard toward me. I didn't just type. I attacked. "She's using a cascade encryption," I muttered, my eyes scanning the lines of code scrolling down the terminal. "She routed the lockout through a proxy server in Singapore. Smart. She thinks it will take us hours to bypass." "We don't have hours," Hosun said, standing behind me, his hand resting on the back of the chair. "If she leaves the country, she disappears. She knows where the bodies are buried, Zuri. Literally. If she sells that information to the authorities or my rivals, the Chijon family is finished. She isn't going to Singapore, I said, my fingers flying. That's a decoy. How do you know? Because she's arrogant, I said. She told me on the comms that she wanted stable leadership. She doesn't want to run away with the money. She wants to replace you. I hit the enter key. A red access denied box flashed. I frowned, trying a backdoor exploit I had written months ago. She needs to meet with the other family heads, I theorized. To prove you're weak, to prove you're dead. She needs to show them she controls the assets. The summit, Ho-sun realized. There is a meeting of the 5 families tonight at midnight. Neutral ground. Where? The Sky Garden, he said. The helipad on top of the Lotte Tower. I typed the location into the system. If she's going there, she needs the encrypted ledger to prove she has the funds. She can't access that from the cloud. It requires a physical key. My biometric key, Ho-sun said, touching his thumb, which she doesn't have. Or, I paused, a thought striking me. She made a copy. When did she have access to your personal secure server? She didn't, Ho-sun said. Then he froze. Unless, yesterday, when I was with you in the medical wing, she was in the office alone for 10 minutes. That's it, I said. She cloned your biometric signature, but a clone degrades. She has a window of maybe 12 hours before the system rejects it. I slammed the final command into the terminal. The screens on the wall flickered to life. The map of Seoul appeared, glowing blue. I'm in, I breathed. I bypassed her lockout. Find her, Ho-sun commanded. I pulled up the city's traffic grid. I filtered for high-priority vehicles moving toward the Lotte Tower. There, I pointed to a blip moving fast on the expressway. Armored limousine. Registered to a shell company owned by Miss Choi. She is going to the meeting, Ho-sun said, his voice deadly quiet. She is going to walk in there, tell them I am dead, show them the money, and claim the throne. He turned to the gun cabinet on the wall. He unlocked it, pulling out a fresh magazine for his handgun. She is going to be disappointed. He looked at me. Can you keep the cameras on her? Can you make sure she doesn't see us coming? I can do better, I said, a vicious smile touching my lips. I can turn the building against her. Good. He walked over to me. He grabbed the back of the chair and spun me around to face him. You stay here, he said. This is dangerous. The 5 families, they are not like Cho. They are old power. If shooting starts, it will be a massacre. I am not staying here, I said, standing up. I was tired, my side ached, and I was covered in mud, but I wasn't backing down. You need me to override the elevator locks, so you can get to the roof. You need me to jam her communications so she can't call for backup. And frankly, Ho-sun, after tonight, I don't think I can sleep unless I know you're safe. The admission hung in the air between us. Ho-sun stared at me. His eyes softened, the hard lines of his face relaxing for just a fraction of a second. He reached out, his hand cupping my neck, his thumb stroking the pulse point under my jaw. You are relentless, he whispered. I learn from the best. He leaned in, his lips brushing my forehead. It was a benediction, a promise. Then let's go, he said. The queen needs to see her kingdom. The Lotte Tower pierced the clouds, a needle of glass and steel dominating the skyline. It was the tallest building in Korea, a symbol of impossible wealth. And tonight, it was a battlefield. We entered through the service basement. Ho-sun's Alpha team had secured the perimeter, silencing the guards with terrifying efficiency. We moved through the concrete corridors, the hum of the building's massive generators vibrating in the air. Elevators are locked down, Gi-hwan reported, checking the panel. She has them set to penthouse access only. We can't call them. Ho-sun looked at me. I plugged my tablet into the service port. Give me 10 seconds. I rewrote the logic protocol for the elevator bank. I told the system that there was a fire alarm on the roof, triggering an emergency recall to the basement. Ding, the doors slid open. After you, I said. We stepped in. The ride up was long. 123 floors. The numbers ticked up on the display. 10, 20, 50. Ho-sun stood in front of me, shielding me from the doors. He checked his weapon again. When the doors open, he said to his men, secure the exits. Miss Choi is mine. No one touches her. What about the other families? Gi-hwan asked. If they stand down, they live, Ho-sun said. If they draw weapons, they die. He turned his head slightly. looking back at me over his shoulder. Stay in the elevator until the room is clear. I'll be watching on the cameras, I said, tapping my tablet. If she tries to run, I'll lock the doors. 100, 110, 120. The elevator slowed. The air pressure changed, popping my ears. Ding. The doors opened onto the roof. The wind hit us first, howling at this altitude. The Sky Garden was a masterpiece of landscaping, manicured hedges, stone paths, and a glass-walled pavilion in the center where the meeting was taking place. Beyond it, the helipad waited, the landing lights glowing red. Ho-sun stepped out. His coat whipped around him in the wind. He didn't crouch. He didn't hide. He walked straight toward the glass pavilion. Inside, I saw them. 5 elderly men sitting around a circular table, and standing at the head, holding a tablet, looking triumphant, was Miss Choi. She saw Ho-sun. Her face went slack. The tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. She thought he was dead. She thought the C4 had vaporized him. Ho-sun pushed open the glass doors. The wind howled into the room, scattering papers. "Sorry I'm late," Ho-sun said, his voice cutting through the wind. "I had to put out a fire." The 5 old men looked at him, then at Miss Choi. They didn't move. They were predators, waiting to see which beast was stronger. "You," Miss Choi stammered, backing away. "You should be dead." "I am hard to kill," Ho-sun said, walking toward her. "Especially when I have a guardian angel." "He's compromised," Miss Choi screamed, turning to the other dons. "He is weak. He let a spy into the inner circle. He risked the family for a woman. I am the only one thinking clearly." "Is that so?" Ho-sun stopped at the table. He picked up the tablet she had dropped. It showed the bank transfer authorization screen. "Emptying the accounts into your private fund. Is that for the family, Choi?" "I was securing the assets," she shrieked. "I was saving us." "You were stealing," Ho-sun said calmly. "And you tried to kill me." He tossed the tablet aside. It cracked on the floor. "Gentlemen," Ho-sun addressed the table. "You have a choice. You can back the traitor who hires Yakuza butchers to kill her own blood, or you can back the dragon who just wiped the Yakuza off the map." The head of the Han family, an ancient man with a cane, looked at Ho-sun. "Cho Do-soon is dead? Threw him off a crane myself," Ho-sun said casually. The old man nodded slowly. He looked at Miss Choi. "He is dead." "You lied. He got lucky." Miss Choi backed up, her eyes darting to the exit leading to the helipad. "This isn't over. I have the encryption keys. I have the backup." She pulled a remote from her pocket. "My helicopter is inbound," she hissed. "If anyone tries to stop me, I upload the entire Chijon database to the police. Everything, every bribe, every body." She backed toward the door. "Ho-sun," I yelled from the elevator. "She's bluffing. The upload takes bandwidth. She can't do it from the air." Miss Choi's eyes snapped to me. Hate, pure and undiluted, twisted her features. "You," she spat. "You ruined everything." She raised the remote, pressing a button. On the helipad outside, floodlights snapped on. The sound of rotor blades chopped at the air. A black helicopter rose from the edge of the building, hovering. "Goodbye, Kang," she sneered. She turned and ran for the helicopter. "Zuri," Ho-sun shouted. "I'm on it." I dropped to the floor of the elevator, opening my laptop. I scanned for the helicopter's signal. It was a civilian transport, heavily modified, but it used standard avionics. "Come on," I typed, my heart hammering. "Handshake protocol. Bypass authentication." Miss Choi was running across the tarmac. The helicopter door opened. A hand reached out to pull her in. "Connect," I screamed at the screen. Connection established. I didn't have time to hack the flight controls fully. I needed something faster, something crude. I hacked the lighting system of the helipad. "Let there be dark," I whispered. I hit enter. Every light on the roof, the landing strip, the floodlights, the safety beacons cut out instantly. The roof was plunged into total darkness. The pilot panicked. Without visual reference points in the high wind, hovering next to a skyscraper was suicide. The engine roared as he pulled up hard, banking away from the building to avoid a collision. Miss Choi was left standing on the edge of the roof, the wind whipping her hair, the helicopter disappearing into the night clouds. She was stranded. The emergency lights flickered back on, bathing the roof in a red glow. Ho-sun walked out onto the tarmac. He removed his jacket, tossing it aside. He rolled up his sleeves. Miss Choi turned around. She was backed against the railing, a thousand